Hey everyone, Chris here, and another Oscar contender that I wanted to get into as I try to make my way through the list of movies that were nominated for Best Picture is The Irishman. And so I saw The Irishman when it was first released on Netflix, which I think was maybe late Thanksgiving, if I'm remembering correctly. And if you know anything about that movie, it's a movie that took a long time to get off the ground. So Martin Scorsese directed it. It was sort of a labor of love, I think, for him to get that movie made. He went to a bunch of different studios, so the story goes, major Hollywood studios, and nobody really wanted to pick up the tab on it. I'm not entirely sure why that was. There's a lot of information floating around on the web about what may have happened with it, but ultimately, Netflix was willing to fund it, and it is a sprawling, sort of epic gangster movie in a lot of ways in the same vein of movies like Goodfellas and Casino, but it's not quite as snappy as those movies, and I think, of course, that's for good reason and intentionally so, because it has kind of a different mindset about it, right? It's a movie that's about aging, it's a movie about loss, it's a movie about dealing with estranged loved ones and sort of working through all of that. So, but it's 3.5 hours long, right? You know, I can't remember off the top of my head how long Casino is. I can remember seeing that when I was younger, when it was on VHS, and it was 2 cassette tapes or 2 VHS tapes, I think. And Goodfellas, I don't believe, is nearly that long, but 3.5 hours is a commitment, and I think for that reason, a lot of people, you know, I think people have seen it. A lot of people who are movie lovers and film lovers have seen it, but I think that's a little bit of a turn off for a lot of people too, because it's a commitment, right? It's the sort of thing for a lot of people that you can't watch in one sitting. I sat down one evening and started it at something like 9:30 p.m. and finished it at 1 a.m. or something, which was my own fault. I knew going into it how long it was, but it felt, I think, especially getting toward the end of the movie, probably because it was so late at night, that it was a little bit maybe more drawn out than it needed to be. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sure what I would cut out of it. And of course, you know, all hail Scorsese. I mean, he's a master director. There's no denying that. But because of its length, I think it can be a little bit off-putting to people. But it's a movie that's absolutely worth seeing. You know, if you don't have a Netflix account, I would find somebody's login information, maybe a friend or family member, and watch it. It's definitely worth it. You know, it's hard to review a Scorsese movie that has, you know, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and sort of those kind of classic actors that he's worked with on his past masterpieces, for lack of a better way to describe those, without comparing them to things like Goodfellas and Casino. And I would say that to me, this movie is not as entertaining as those movies are. They don't have the rewatchability of those movies, but that doesn't mean it's not also a masterpiece in its own right, for all the reasons that I previously outlined. So, you know, there are some things about the movie, though, that I do think hold it back a little bit. The decision to sort of go with this digital de-aging approach that's used on De Niro and some of the other actors, Pesci, you know, in the movie, mostly works, but there are some scenes where it's a little bit jarring, the effect, mostly because it looks nice in the face, but, you know, these guys now are older actors, and so they don't quite move like the younger counterparts, their younger selves that they're meant to portray in certain flashback sequences and that sort of thing. So there's this weird disconnect that happens from time to time. There's one scene in particular where De Niro is sort of, you know, roughing up a guy who pushed his daughter, who works in a grocery store in a market in New York, and there's just something about the way he moves in that scene that's just really kind of rigid and is not all that convincing, given that he's supposed to be a lot younger in that sequence than he is sort of in the present time in which the movie's being told. So it's just kind of a weird, awkward thing where he's not moving quite right during that sequence. And so, you know, it doesn't totally take you out of the picture, but at the same time, it's not as convincing as it could be. And I don't know that the answer would have been to have younger actors just play that same character. I think it again, for the most part, works to have the de-aging thing happen. But because of these little things like that kind of stand out in the movie, it's hard for me to give it sort of a 10 out of 10 score. But the themes that are in this movie and the way that it's directed, with the energy that Scorsese brings to everything he directs, and how I think timely it is for the people who are in the movie, the stars of the movie, the actors who were in a lot of ways sort of coming full circle, working with Scorsese again, and trying to tackle some themes that have application for people who are sort of trying to work through the end of their careers and that sort of thing. So it's a great movie. It's it deals with Jimmy Hoffa, it deals with Teamsters and sort of the mob affiliation during that time period. And it does deal with the disappearance of Hoffa, which is one of the major things that it attempts to broach. But going into it, I was a little bit worried that if I didn't know a lot about the history of that, I wouldn't really enjoy it quite as much as I would some of Scorsese's other movies. But you don't really have to know a whole lot about it. You get the context that you need throughout the course of the film to sort of connect all those dots and understand what's happening. And so, again, it's another solid gangster offering from Scorsese. Looking at the slate of movies that have been nominated for Best Picture this year, I am not entirely sure that it will win, but I think given the star power behind it, given the scale of it, given the themes at play, it's got a shot for sure. And again, it's hard for me to say 100% that it's going to beat out anything else since I haven't seen all the Best Picture nominations yet, but absolutely you should watch the movie. If I had to give it a score, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10. It's another really home run for Scorsese and everybody involved. And Al Pacino's great in it as well. So certainly check it out. If you've seen it, let me know what you think about it. And again, I'll be back soon with some more videos of the other Best Picture nominations and see what I think about them. Again, thanks for watching.